going on, my friends, and welcome into another edition of the All Nittany Lion podcast here on PHLY. Thanks so much for hanging out with us once again. Guys, before we even get into the pleasantries, you know what? Let's do the pleasantries first. Of course, the guys to my right, that's Adam Taliaferro and Jason Cabinda. I am Tyler Zulli. Adam, Jason, it is a pleasure to be back with you guys once again, as always. And thank you for being flexible today. We have a crazy day of coverage here on PHLY between the Phillies and the Sixers season about to start, the Eagles getting back into action. So I want to say, first and foremost, thank you to both of you for being flexible with me today on the schedule.
Of course, man. Thanks for leading the ship.
So you guys bring up the phrase any given Saturday all the time. And I think two things can be true with on this past Saturday's victory, 27-11 win over UCLA. Any given Saturday on the fact that you came out of Beaver Stadium with a Big Ten victory. And I think that bottom line is what matters. And then secondly, and maybe more importantly, this was one of the craziest weekends of college football we've seen in a while. 3 top 25 teams go down, including 2 ranked within the top 10, and both of them losing to unranked opponents. Alabama loses to Vanderbilt. We'll talk about all of those games down the stretch. But let's dive into the 27-11 win over UCLA. And guys, I want to get your initial reactions, your initial thoughts, because I had a sense of it was a football game. It happened. I wouldn't say it was a spectacular display of football on either side. Penn State showed it was the better team, especially defensively. Justyn Martin looked like he was a much better quarterback than a guy making his first ever start, in college football. But it felt to me like this was a combination of Penn State played maybe a little bit vanilla, at least it felt that way. And UCLA, unfortunately for them, maybe just not as talented, not quite ready to compete on the level of a team like Penn State. Just your guys' initial thoughts on this one, because to me, it just kind of felt like a football game happened.
Yeah, offensively, I'd say that I didn't feel like they schemed up the run as well as they had the past few games. I feel like the run game has kind of been our backbone to our offense. And I talked about it throughout the week about UCLA's front seven and how they actually would present a challenge, because it felt like that was the lone bright spot on their team. And I didn't feel like we rose to the challenge. Now, it's part of that because, Nick Singleton, our home run guy, didn't play. I felt like Hatron was still running hard. He was still always, falling forward. But to have 90 rushing yards against a team like that, I don't feel like we stepped up to the plate in the running game the way that we should have. And that limited the offense. It was kind of our first time that the running game didn't really, wasn't very explosive as we've, become accustomed to seeing over the past few weeks.
Yeah, I completely agree with your views on the running game. And after watching everything that happened this weekend, I've my mindset's completely shifted where I want to see Penn State blowing out dudes every weekend. I've come to realize I am taking that win. I'm being happy about it, and I'm moving on to the next one. But of course, as all of us, we want to see continued progression from on all sides, offense, defense, special teams. So I would say the one takeaway I saw was I don't think I saw many penalties. Maybe I missed. I think I saw a special teams penalty, but I don't think I saw many penalties this game, which I thought was good to see going into the meat of our schedule. But the thing is, I just really appreciated this team handling their business.
Yep.
And we could talk further about it, but it could going into halftime. They could have went into halftime 7-7, and they were able to blow up and ended up going in 14-3, which was I think just really changed the complexion of the game. But overall, another win in the win column, and we move on to next week.
So 5-0 for the 4th consecutive season under James Franklin. It is the first time that's happened in school history. And in fact, Penn State is one of just a few teams to start 5-0 for 4 consecutive years. And again, I think that we're going to dive deeper into the game, but I think that holds some merit. Now the challenge becomes beat the big boys, right? Beat Ohio State coming up in a couple weeks. USC is the present challenge right in front of you. You had a good win over Illinois. You had a good win over West Virginia in week 1, and you sandwiched that with a couple of games that you should win, and you did win. So as you guys always talk about the any given Saturday approach, James Franklin was effusive of his defense again in his post-game press conference. We'll dive deeper into that. But I think there is merit to say when you're tasked with starting quickly and beating teams you're supposed to beat over the last 4 seasons, James Franklin and his teams have done that. 5-0 for 4 consecutive years is nothing to shrug your shoulders at.
Yeah, I mean, Coach Franklin, I know we've all heard him say it's extremely hard to win in college football. You can't. I mean, all of us, I call myself a fan now that I'm no longer playing. We all just take it for granted at times that we're just our guys just supposed to go out there and win. But there's been ample evidence throughout this entire season that that's not always the case. So I think Coach is right, and we should appreciate and acknowledge and congratulate the fantastic starts that this team has got to over the last 4 or 5 years. But as many of us know, it's that back half of the season. I think the counter to that stat was we're 13-11, something like that, in the back half of the season. And Coach has said we've got to get better there. But I'm truly excited to see this team's put together a lot of great film. They've created a foundation. So now we just got to keep building as we go forward. But congratulations to our guys, because being the only team in America that can say that is something special.
Yeah. All right, so let's dive into this weekend's performance. Jason, you brought up the lack of Nick Singleton. We're going to dive into that. Maybe a little less of a lack of explosion from Kaytron Allen. And I don't know if it was maybe a freshness thing. I don't know if it was maybe a being able to scheme defensively. And like you brought up, UCLA's front 4, I think did a pretty nice job. But I wanted to start for you guys with the defense, because we talked about it, Adam, last week, about how good this defense has been, specifically in the second half of seasons. And I wanted to dive even a little bit further into detail the third quarter defense for this team and the second half defense for this team as a whole. On Saturday, they gave up. They didn't give up. There was negative 19 yards allowed. So backwards progression for UCLA in the third quarter on 11 plays. That's an average of negative 1.7 yards per play. If you take it out and you extrapolate it through the first 5 games of the regular season, James Franklin talked about this in his post-game presser, they've given up 87 yards in 5 third quarters. On 46 plays, they have given up 1.9 yards per play in the third quarter. To take it a little bit further back, the defense has now held Big Ten opponents rushing under 100 yards in 15 of the last 16 Big Ten games. Wow. This defense has routinely stepped up, especially in the second half when it matters the most.
Yeah, I mean, this defense, and I've been talking about it, there's just a ton of playmakers. And I feel like I've seen, especially in these past 2 games, a really, really good game plan when it comes to adjusting going into the second half. I mean, it's the defense that clearly wants to play a lot of man, feels really good about our coverage players, sprinkles in some zone in cover 2 and cover 4. But for the most part, it's not a ton of one high unless it's man, not a lot of cover 3. So I just feel like it's a bend but don't break mentality. And in the second half, I feel like we're picking the perfect times to go risk, and we're getting the reward on those risk plays. So I just feel like they're really sticking to their game plan. One thing that concerns me about the defense sometimes when I watch it is, are we really good just because we have great players on the field, or are we really good because we're really great at what we do? Are we improving in our identity of who we want to be as a defense, or do we just have great players out there? That's the one thing I feel like I want to see improve in our defense is, can we get better at what we do, at what our base identity and core of our defense is?
Yeah, I mean, I get excited because it's truly winning football. I mean, any of us that are watching this, if you have a defense that's playing at that level, it doesn't matter what it always matters what your offense is doing, but it gives you a little bit more leeway when your offense may be struggling or not playing to where we want it to be yet, that your defense is always going to have you in the game. And with that being said, I feel confident, going into any stadium and saying we got a chance. And this weekend is no different. But again, in the UCLA game, I'm watching, and that first half, those first few series, you're not sure which way it's going to go, and then of course Penn State goes in and scores. UCLA gets the big play down the sideline right before the end of the half. Looks like they're going to go in and score. We hold them to a field goal. Penn State comes back down and scores. So it's 14-3. So I think those, there's certain plays or certain series throughout the game that really change the complexion of the game. And I said the defense, as Jason mentioned, we bent, but we did not break. And I think that was huge, being able to go into halftime 14-3 as opposed to 7-7. And then coming out in the second half, we all know what the defense does in the second half. So I just think that was such a huge momentum shift. And I just want to give, a lot of kudos to the defense and, of course, to the adjustments that are made at halftime, because that's not an easy thing to do. And, defense showed up yet again and continued their level of dominance on the field.
Yeah, and they play very mistake-free. I think that's the biggest thing when I watch this defense. Like, there aren't really any MEs and mental errors and things of that, standpoint. Guys just being in the wrong place. There was that one wheel route that we saw off the left sideline that they hit for like 50 or 60 yards, but besides that play, there really isn't a lot out there. So, you can tell that, they're based off of what they want to do. The guys feel very comfortable in it, comfortable with what their assignments are, what they're supposed to do, adjustments to formations, and all those kinds of things. So it's a really good defense. And then you mentioned the score going into halftime. That's that's one thing about Drew's game this year that I feel like is so big, is that mentality of we just don't want to lose this game versus we're going to continue attacking, continue staying on the offensive and stay aggressive because we believe in Drew. I think going into the season, we weren't perfectly sure about either when it came to the weapons we had on offense from a receiver room standpoint or whatever it may have been. And then how well or what was the jump that Drew is going to take this year. And I think it's very clear he's taken a jump to the extent where I feel way more comfortable about Drew taking over a game and having to win a game for us than I did last year.
You couldn't have said it better. I remember last year there were so many times like, Drew, throw that thing down the field, man, throw it down the field. And you just feel like he was so I don't know what scared is not the right word, but he was tentative.
Just conserved,
He was conservative. Didn't want to make a mistake. Didn't want to throw an interception, But now you just feel that you see that confidence. A couple of those passes, specifically Liam Clifford. He was putting things in there. And those are throws that he probably wouldn't have made last year. And to see him doing that this year is great to see.
Liam Clifford's first 100-yard receiving game of his career. This comes 2 weeks after he scored his first touchdown as a Nittany Lions. So, maybe not happening with the exact or with the exact players you were expecting. Maybe expecting a little more from a Julian Fleming or and we've talked about the receiving core before. But you guys bring up the play of Drew Aller. And I remember, I know there was a contentious moment in the media the one day between, I forget which media member it was, but it was a media member and with James Franklin. And basically the media member asked him, hey, are you going to take more shots downfield? And I think James took exception to the question. I think, Franklin took exception to the question because they were winning football games. But you are seeing it now, a little more natural progression, a maturation of Drew Aller. Probably still not asking him to do everything because of how good the run game is and how good the run game has been and how good the O-line has been, but a definite maturation of Drew Aller in his second full season as the Penn State starting quarterback.
Yeah, let's not forget, this offense at the end of the day is built around Tyler Warren. It's built around a position that normally an offense isn't really built off of, just because of how much stuff we can do with Tyler and how dangerous and complete of a player and tight end that Tyler is. So that's part of the reason why we don't have to ask Drew to do too much, because we got Ty Warren, whether it's in the pass game, run game, play action game, then we got two stud running backs that we can hand the ball off all day long and are confident that they're going to have damn near 100 each, at the end of the game. So it's a great formula. It's a winning formula. It's a formula that lasts late into the season, and that's what matters most.
So, Jason, you brought up the word identity, and we're now 5 games into the regular season now. So I wanted to ask you guys, I think this is probably a good, appropriate time to reevaluate or reassess what the identity of a 5-0 football team is. Is it as simple as a team that plays really rock solid defense, especially in the second half, a team that can run the football well, and a team that trusts its quarterback to limit the mistakes and kind of play mistake-free football. Is it that simple, or are there more nuances to the identity of this team? And if there are, what are those like, underlying things that makes this a successful football team?
Yeah, I always give my man Jason. He's my nuance guy, because I'm guilty of being overly simplified things, and that's why I look at it. And Coach Franklin, I think, mentioned it in his press conference. It's like people are starting to look at us like a physical team. He says that's what we want. Our identity to be is like, hey, you're going to have to buckle up when you play against us. And the thing that I really enjoyed watching this last game, and we've seen it in other games, is that physicality. 71, when they put the offensive lineman in motion, and he came and just laid the wood on the defensive end. I saw a couple of our wide receivers just, they weren't going out of bounds. They are finishing the run. Of course, we see it from K-Tron and Nick all the time. But I just love on the offensive side where these guys are just bringing it every single possession. And on the defensive side, it just goes without saying, these guys are just flying around the field. So I'll say just from my simplistic view, is the physicality that I've seen from this team has been really nice to see in the first 5 games.
Yeah, I think this team plays with an overall attitude, offensively and defensively. I feel like the offense has kind of embodied our defensive mentality, but just from an offensive standpoint, receivers finishing blocks, like you said, finishing runs instead of going out of bounds. Like, I'm gonna make sure you feel this before this play is over. Like, you know what I mean? When you have that type of mentality, especially from your skill players, especially from guys of positions that maybe normally don't care too much for the contact, they don't care too, like, that can be intimidating when it's like, man, even this little 5'9" receiver is trying to lower his shoulder on me. Like, dang, all of them are tough, So when you have that overall embodying attitude about a team, those are the kind of things that last throughout the season. Like when you talk nuances and you talk like the offense, it's just going to be continuing to build on these formations, these shifts, all these things. And mentally, from a capacity standpoint, the players are going to have to continue learning, not getting complacent from that standpoint, because Coach K is going to have to keep coming up with new stuff, continue to keep building off of plays that have had success and that we've already put on film, so that there's more to it. The percentages around how often you do certain things can't be skewed in one direction. You got to make sure that the defense is always on their toes and has to respect everything. That's why when you put Tyler Warren in there, you put a couple of pass plays in there so that when he goes in there, you don't think every single play is going to be a run or going to be him running a route some way, shape, or form, things of that nature. So offensively, that's what's going to happen. Defensively, I think we just need to keep working on our identity, figuring out what I feel like we are best at. Because I feel like even in these games, like I said, the bend and don't break mentality. We like to keep everybody in front of us. No deep balls, Like I've been talking about the inside slanter number 2. Like, yeah, we want to let it catch it and tackle it right on the catch. My thing is, when a Jeremiah Smith is out there at number 2, are we going to be able to? Is that going to be a tackle on the catch? That's what I worry about. When it comes to the elite playmakers, I love the keep everything in front of you, no big plays, the mentality. We're going to make the offense earn every single yard mentality that we have on defense. I want to see how it fares against a very potent offense. And USC could come out with that level of potency in this game.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to get into the USC breakdown in a minute, and I'm curious, and we have to pay some bills in just a second, but I'm curious, Jason, you brought up the Tyler Warren sub package of him playing the Wildcat quarterback position and adding a couple of pass plays into that mix. And maybe you don't bring them out until maybe you feel comfortable in your lead. The other kind of sub package Wildcat formation that we've talked about plenty is the formation with Bo Perbula on the field as well. I'm curious your guys' thoughts with that one, because it seems to me, as you brought up with Tyler Warren, it seems to me that it feels like defenses don't feel like he is a threat to throw the ball right now in that sub package where he is the Wildcat quarterback, which is strange, obviously, because he's a quarterback, right? Do you guys feel like they should be adding some additional pass plays into that Wildcat package when Perbula is under center and Aller is out wide, or is it sustainable just the way it is?
I mean, I just also think it's a change of pace deal with our offense. You know, we've seen Coach K sprinkle in a lot of no tempo as of late. So a lot of the things that he's doing is like he'll put in a personnel package that is difficult, like having Bo in there at quarterback and leaving Drew in or taking Drew out and putting an extra back, extra tight end, whatever the case may be is, and then keeping you in the personnel that you're in and playing around with you. And that's the cool thing about tempo is like you get the defense on their heels, and when you hit on that first play, it feels like they don't ever catch their footing. So there are different ways you can handle it, but I just feel like Bo's such a change of pace, and they have just enough. And obviously, the fact that he's an actual quarterback, where I don't feel like defenses are going out there and being like, "Oh, this is automatically run play because Bo's in there." I don't feel that.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think that's the beauty of these formations, that there's always that element there. Even though they haven't seen it, they still got to scheme up for it because, he's a quarterback. But again, just going back to the physicality side of things, we saw Bo lower his shoulder in a few plays that he was in there and pick up, I think he almost picked up a first down, carried the guy for like 3 yards, as a quarterback. So I just love the fact that he's willing to put his shoulder down, get those extra yards. But I am excited to see when he's back there, when they're going to let him, let loose a little bit, because he's a talented guy, and he's got all the tools to be successful back there.
All right, guys, we got a lot to get into. We are going to dive into this USC game because I think people are maybe underestimating this team a little bit just because their record says 3-2. We'll dive into that a little bit in further detail. But first, let me tell you about some of our friends, including our friends over at Shady Rays. You've been hearing me talk about Shady Rays for a while now. They are the only shades that I trust because they are quality shades that are built to last. They've got you covered with some of the best premium polarized shades that won't break the bank because they're an independent sunglass company. They pass on those savings to you, and you will get 300,000 people who agree with me, and it's why they've got 5-star ratings by over 300,000 people. They have durable frames and crystal clear optics, which makes them the perfect choice. Whether you're at a football game, you're at a tailgate, you're outside on a hike, whatever the case may be, the frames and the crystal clear optics pair together for a comfortable viewing experience with these glasses. And they've got hundreds of options to choose from, so you are bound to find the perfect pair that matches your style. You might even find a pair that matches your favorite team style. Plus, if your shades ever go missing or take some damage, don't worry about it because they have the most insane protection in all of eyewear. That is, every pair is backed by a lost or broken replacement. And if you're not in love with the pair that you buy, maybe you bought them online and they don't feel quite right on your face when you get them, you have a worry-free return up to 30 days. It means there's no risk when you shop. And exclusively for our listeners right now, Shady Rays is giving out the best deal of the year. Head on over to shadyrays.com and use the code PHLY for 35% off your polarized sunglasses, and try for yourself why 300,000 people have rated these shades 5 stars. And while you're out and about, maybe you notice that your roof needs some help, you've got leaky pipes, or maybe it's just time to clean out the gutters and get them replaced because winter is coming and you know what snow and cold temperatures can do to your outside appliances and things like that. That's where our friends over at Ace Home Hardware have you covered, because they are not just the place with the helpful hardware, folks. They are also the place that will help you get helpful home service and repair as well. So if you've got plumbing, heating, or cooling issues, they've got the trusted pros to keep your home humming all year long. That's over at Ace Hardware Home Services. They bring helpful home, and the helpful that you love from the store will come right to your front door. So visit Ace Hardware Home Services online at www.acehardwarehomeservices.com to get you started on your next home project as soon as today. All right, 3-2 USC. Penn State is going to hit the road, and James Franklin already talking about the issues of a runway at State College, having to bus over to Harrisburg so that they have a runway that they can get off the ground on. Kind of comical, kind of serious, but Penn State will head to California for the first time for a Big Ten matchup with USC and Lincoln Riley's team. And guys, this is a 3-2 USC team that was ranked inside the top 15 just a couple of weeks ago. A loss to Michigan on the one of the final plays of the game. We talked about that at length when the game happened. And then a loss last week to Minnesota. And a couple of things. I didn't watch the game when it happened, so I saw, wow, they lost to Minnesota 24-17, and now they're 1-2 in Big Ten play. I didn't realize what USC kind of shot themselves in the foot a little bit with this one. They turned the ball over 3 times. Mason Miller threw 2 interceptions. He only threw for 200 yards. And this was the stat that jumped out to me the most. USC had 6 drives of 45 yards or more in this game, which I don't know about you guys. I think 45 is a pretty sustainable drive number. I mean, that's a pretty long distance to go down the field. They had 6 drives of 45 yards. They only came away with points on 2 of those 6 drives. They had an interception, a fumble, and I believe they were down on 4th down on a couple of them. Maybe it was the 2 interceptions. But long sustained drives that just didn't end up in points. They only get 14 points off of those 2 drives. I don't want Penn State fans to mistake this team just because they're 3-2 and now no longer ranked as a lesser opponent than they would have been 3 or 4 weeks ago. I don't know about you guys. I still think this is a good USC team.
Yeah, I think this team's dangerous 100%. This is a dangerous team to me. And, as I was looking through this week and kind of thinking about what I feel like the result of this game is going to be, I cannot seem to land somewhere. This could be a game where USC just comes out offensively and they're just firing on all cylinders. And, we have a shaky start because we've had some shaky starts these past 2 games. That's been one of Coach Franklin's talking points in his press conferences, us starting faster. We're away, so we're the ones traveling. It's like there's a lot of factors that could tip in USC's favor in this game where I just don't know what the result is going to be. It could be a lopsided win on either side. It could be a very close game. So I think they're going to have all the juice in the world coming off of back-to-back losses. They're trying to put it together. They know their capabilities, who they can be, things of that nature. We got to go over there and take care of our business. This is going to be a really intriguing game and one that's going to have massive implications for both teams, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm being perfectly honest, I would have loved to have seen USC win last week because, when you have that 3-2 on your record, you hate to say it's a must-win game, but I think on the USC side, it's getting close to that must-win territory. And when these guys start really, I'm sure they'll be talking about it all week, and that, a desperate team scares me a little bit. And the fact that we just spoke about it, it's just, when you're playing football, when you're traveling, you get into a routine. And Penn State's routine is going to be a little thrown off this week, having to leave on Thursday, fly across the country. I was looking, at Penn State my entire 4 years, we never played on the West Coast one time, even bowl games. All our bowl games we went to 2, but they were all in Florida. So I never experienced flying across country. Jason has done it, but that's a whole different dynamic for dudes that haven't had the opportunity or had to experience that yet. So all those factors going into this game, it's like to Jason's point, to your point, Tyler, you just don't know what you're going to get when you go through those first couple series. So it's going to be very telling. We pick the ball off this Saturday. What team we're going to see when we're out there on both sides of the field. USC and Penn State.
Even from a player's perspective, just how different it is, like just trying to prepare, you mentioned like leaving on Thursday and stuff, like that's always on weeks like this. It's always such a focus from a coach's perspective to talk to his team, be like, we got to be extra focused this week. We're leaving a day early. The preparation feels a bit rushed, whether it's in meetings and practice, you're trying to get more in, you end up leaving early. Some of the meetings or walkthroughs that you're accustomed to having on the field or inside a haluba, you're now having in like a hotel conference room that, without the same amount of space, guys are running condensed routes and stuff. There's a whole lot that is different. So the mental aspect when it comes to the preparation during the week has to be so elite. It has to be so great, and heightened during weeks like that because there's just so many factors that are changing the feel of the week. And that's something I feel like in football we try to stress so much is like the monotony of everything and keeping everything the same and routine and stuff like that and doing everything the same every single week, preparing your body, your mind, your film work the same every single week. So when you have stuff like this that inherently just shakes up the schedule because that's just how it's got to go, it can be really tough. It can be tough. And then you add classes, you add everything else with it. It's a lot.
I will say, my very first game at Penn State, my freshman year, USC came down. We played USC in the kickoff classic up at the Meadowlands. And I remember that was our coaches were telling us, you know, hey, it's going to be difficult on USC because they're going to have to deal with the time difference and all this stuff. But they were telling us because it was a new opponent. None of us on our team had ever played USC, so we're all jacked up. You know, you're playing a traditional powerhouse. So from that standpoint, it's just also them telling us keep your emotions in check because, like, you know, we're all human. You playing USC, like, oh, man, we don't get to play these guys. I mean, now we will, but this is going to be an exciting time, you know, for the entire team. So just trying to stay focused from that standpoint is another dynamic that we really got to focus on going into this game.
So you guys always talk about the human element of things, and I think sometimes fans maybe lose a little bit of sight of that. And so I'm curious, between the monotony of the prep work and being out of your routine a little bit, on top of your football work, I have to imagine like the classwork element to it, like the student portion of student athlete gets flipped on its head a little bit too. Probably adds another dynamic of difficulties where you're trying to, you know, take work with you on the road, and you know, you got to prep for projects or tests or whatever the case may be. I would have to imagine the student portion of it is hard as well, on top of all of the changes in your football schedule.
I'm old, man, so it may have changed tremendously since I was in college, but that's where I give Penn State. I don't know if it's different at other schools, but I give Penn State so much credit because that was never, you know, it seemed to always work out. Like whenever we had to travel, I never felt any extra pressure of, you know, oh, you know, work is piling up. You know, we had great support staff. Giving a shout out to my man Ty Kolka. They said we were right. So I look for, again, it could change substantially since I was in college, but I will say during my time that never seemed to come up as an issue, even during the season. I don't know, Jason. I don't know if you felt any differently.
I just had some challenging professors, man. I went to school for econ and finance, and
so he had a real majors too. You got to realize that
there's a couple of professors.
You should have taken the broadcast route like I did.
I definitely made college life very difficult on myself from a workload standpoint. But I just had a couple of professors, and you guys know, some of these professors were like, they just didn't like athletes for whatever the reason. Like they just looked at athletes and felt like, oh, because you're an athlete, you must get this special treatment or whatever. And I remember this one specific instance that I had with this one professor, Chud. If you are an econ major at Penn State, you know exactly who that is. I will call him out. But we had like Ohio State. It was like away. We were number 2 in the country. I'm captain. It's a big game coming up for us. And like we had some project that was due on that Saturday at like midnight. And there was just no way I was going to be able to get it done before we had a night game that Saturday. I would have had to basically do it all of Friday and then Saturday on game day when I'm supposed to be preparing for one of the biggest games of our season. And there was just no way I was going to get it done. And I asked him, I was like, hey, can I get a 1-day, extension so I could hand it in Sunday at midnight? Because I probably wasn't even going to get home till what? You remember those night games? We don't get home till Sunday, 3 a.m., 2:30 in the morning, whatever it is. Like I'm willing to get up right then and there and just knock this project out all day long on Sunday, and like absolutely would not allow me to extend it. Like I got like 25% taken off of RIP just because it was late. It was like, yeah, but it depends on who you deal with. Some teachers are understanding, some just aren't. But that's what comes with it, man. It's a full-time job and then some.
Yeah, living 2 full-time jobs of the student athlete life. It is not an envious position if you have difficult students or difficult professors like that. So I did want to ask you guys, as we continue on with this USC conversation, we talked about the fact that Penn State's run defense has been so good over the last 15 of the last 16 Big Ten games. They've held Big Ten opponents under 100 rushing yards. Might get a little bit tested this weekend. So Woody Marks is the lead back for USC, and he's gone over 100 yards himself in 3 of the 5 games they've played this year. And the funny thing is he's actually been better on the road than he has been at home. He's averaging 6 yards a carry on the road, 5 yards a carry at home. Still really gaudy numbers no matter what. But they have done a really good job of sustaining drives because their run game has been successful. They're ranked 13th in the country in third down conversions. They're converting at over 50% of a clip. And they are doing a really good job of having these sustained drives. And like we talked about earlier, they really hurt themselves by not scoring. This run game for USC with Marks as the lead back is pretty significant, especially when you have a guy like Miller Moss, who has done a good job at the quarterback position. They are definitively multi-dimensional on the offensive side of things. And then you add the facet of Lincoln Riley into the mix, who is a really, really good offensive coach. It's probably going to be the biggest offensive test of the season for Penn State's defense.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I was looking at those numbers on third down, especially from our last game. Like, coming into that last game, UCLA had only made like 28% of their third down conversions. Against that number shot up to like 41 or 42%, which is not what we expected, out of our defense. And we talk about the adjustments that they make second half, and that number does significantly drop, in the second half for our defense. But like, man, if in that first half we're not on our P's and Q's, like that confidence, this is somewhat of a front-running team to me, where when things are going real well, they're just rolling, And what I don't want to see happen is we take a quick 14-0 or 21-0, we're behind 14-0, 21-0. Like, we've never been in that position as an offense where we have to play a certain type of way in order to catch up. So I don't want this, really our biggest game of the season, to have to be the first time where that happens. And we have to find out what kind of an offense we are when we're down. I don't think that would put us in a very favorable situation to win this game. So the importance of starting fast and the importance of the money down and third down this week is going to be huge.
I could not agree more. And Tyler, you mentioned, this is a 3-2 football team. But if you look at those two losses, outside of some mistakes and some bad bounces, this could be a 5-0 football team. I'm looking, they lost to Michigan 27-24. They lost last week by a touchdown, 24-17. Few plays in those games, and these guys are 5-0 and maybe a top 10 ranked team. So I just, I'm sure our guys playing understand that, but from a fan perspective, you got to realize, like, this is a very good football team that has a very, have great athletes and a very good football coach. So, Lincoln Riley, I'm sure he's scheming up as we speak right now. Those guys will be well prepared, and they're going to test us. They're going to make this defense stop them. I mean, I know it sounds simple, but he's going to give them some looks that I'm sure they haven't seen this year. So it's, I expect some trick plays. I expect them to pull out all types of gadgets to throw Penn State off. And as Jason mentioned, and if they can get out to that early lead, that could be concerning.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
So Nick Singleton likely back this week. James Franklin said in his press conference yesterday that he was pretty darn close to playing on Saturday. It was kind of a last-minute decision for him to not play. They expect him to play this week, so that the duo is back, or should be back, between he and Kaytron Allen, which we've talked about plenty of them keeping each other not just fresh, but keeping each other accountable. USC's run defense has given up almost 160 yards per game on the ground and given up 5 yards per carry. Now, that could be slightly skewed because they did already play Michigan, who they gave up 290 rushing yards to. So maybe that's slightly skewed a little bit. But their strength is in their pass defense. They're 13th in the country in passing yards allowed. They give up just 0.6 yards through the air, less than Penn State does. Penn State gives up 157. USC gives up 157.6 per game. So they are neck and neck in the pass game defensively. If you guys were James Franklin and Andy Kotelnicki, how would you offensively scheme this game to beat USC?
I'm running the ball. You got to stop. You got to show me you can stop the run. I'm literally running the ball first, second down, every series until you show me that you can stop the run. If you can stop the run, then bring up the DAP from there. But I'm taking a page out of Michigan's playbook when they play USC, and you are going to have to prove to me on more occasions than once that you can stop our running game before I do anything different.
Yeah, I think you're really lucky that the schedule allowed for this. You're playing UCLA. Nick Singleton was a bit banged up. You have the luxury of being able to say, hey, we got another stud guy. We're going to rest you for a week because we know we got USC coming in next week. I don't want our guy to be really fresh. Now Nick Singleton's back. We're going to have our two-headed monster back. We're a physical team. They've been through some physical games. Let's not forget that. Like this team has played some physical teams already. Like they're kind of just on the tread on the tires is starting to show a little bit here, and us coming to them in their stadium for that same type of game, I don't think bodes well for them. So, they're getting their introduction to Big Ten play. I don't think there's a better test compared to like how they had, Michigan over there than us. I think it's going to be a physical game. We got to impose our will on them from rip. And who knows? We can win in a landslide in this game. We'll see.
All right, so we got a crazy couple of weeks of college football coming up, including some matchups with Penn State. And I got to ask you guys: is there a new Heisman favorite in the Heisman conversation? We'll talk more about it on the other side. But first, let me tell you about our friends over at Empire today. We've talked to you about Empire quite a bit on this show, but what you get with Empire is great shop-at-home convenience, the right products for your needs, and quick and professional installation, and a price match guarantee. Empire today is the best place to get new floorings. So, of course, there's going to be copycat companies, but what they can't beat Empire today on is the quality, the service, and the speed. So instead, what they do is they'll advertise low-quality products that Empire simply won't carry. There are thousands of different options for your home, whether you're going tile, flooring, carpeting, and Empire wants to take the difficult decisions away from you. They want to make this as simple as possible. They want to help you walk through the process of making your home look amazing and feel amazing and give you flooring that you are going to be excited about. One of the best things that Empire has on their shop at home website is their virtual floor designer. It's a great way to see how your floors will look in any space. So all you're going to do is go to the room that's in question, whether it's your living room, your bathroom, your kitchen, and you're going to snap a picture of it, upload it to the website, and you're going to instantly see how your new floors will look in your home. And Empire prides themselves on the convenient shop at home. So they'll help customers shop for floors exactly how they want them to look. They're going to walk you through the process, and they are going to give you the best quality service that they can provide. Just incredible service from start to finish, from your purchasing process all the way through until you decide, yes, that's the flooring that I want in my new home. And with Empire today, schedule a free in-home estimate, and all listeners will receive a $350 discount when they use the promo code PHLY. Restrictions do apply. See Empire today/PHLY for more details. And while we're here speaking about details matter when you're talking about some of the best articles, some of the best written content that you could possibly get. And that, of course, is what happens when you become a diehard here at PHLY. Be on the lookout at allphly.com for some of the great events that are coming up, including tonight. We have a pre- and post-game show sandwiching a watch party for the Phillies and the Mets, Game 3 of the NLDS, live at Gall & Co. in Port Richmond. It'll be myself, Jamie Lynch, Renee Washington. We will be there. But what you're going to get with Diehards is more than just great events. You're going to get more than just written content. You're going to get some of the best premium content for members only at allphly.com. You get 20% off all of our paid events. You'll get incredible merch for all teams, and you get a free shirt when you become a member. You also get access to our members only Diehard, which we call the PHLY Lounge. All you have to do is head on over to allphly.com and join the best sports fans in the city and become a diehard today. All right, guys, crazy couple of weeks coming up across not just Penn State football, but across college football in general. So let me just give you a couple of teams and what they have heading into the next couple of weeks. Number 1, Texas will face 18th ranked Oklahoma and number 5 Georgia in the next 2 weeks. Number 2, Ohio State plays Oregon this week and Nebraska the following week before taking on Penn State. Oregon, of course, has Ohio State. They'll also play Illinois and Michigan in 3 of the last 4 weeks. And then number 7, Alabama has Tennessee, Missouri, and LSU, 3 of their next 4 games. Now, I know that there's a lot of conversations about what these kind of super conferences have become between the Big Ten and the SEC specifically, the ACC to a little bit of a lesser extent. But what these conferences, the new conference alignment has allowed for is some of the best teams in college football to go head-to-head early to middle portion of the season. You don't have to wait till the conference championships or until college football playoff rolls around. We are getting treated to some amazing college football in the month of October, and I think it's really just getting started. I don't know about you guys, but I'm super excited.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many things that are wide open. We're seeing teams that haven't even beat an AP top 5 team in their last 60 tries. Vandy beating Alabama last week. I mean, Mizzou getting completely steamrolled by them. I mean, there's some things that have happened where it's like, whoa, like maybe we don't have a handle on how good some of these teams are. You know what I mean? Like you look at Oregon, and I've talked about it all offseason. Like I feel like they have a cupcake schedule. Like I think they could have a possibility of getting blown out by Ohio State and dropping significantly in the rankings. You know, so there's just a whole lot going on, a ton of shakeup. People complaining about Penn State barely beating Bowling Green. Like, dude, a win is a win. Because I promise you, there's a whole lot of teams right now that wish they were 5-0 that are not because they slipped up and didn't have their P's and Q's all right and their shit tight. You know, so whole lot going on, man. Whole lot.
Oh man, I just makes you love college football, man. This is what we all want. We want to see the best play against the best, and even the upsets. That's what makes it fun. And you're looking over even just this weekend and next weekend, we're going to learn a lot about all these teams. A lot of the questions about this team has a a quality opponent. Everyone is going to play someone that's going to test their strength. And you come out these next 2 weeks, and even by the end of the season, I don't think there's going to be. Of course, there'll still be controversy around who the 12 teams should be in the playoffs, but I think we'll all have a good feeling as to who the best 12 teams are in the country just by the test that they're going to have to get through for this entire year. I just gotta, I got kids, I got a wife, I got to find a way to watch all this college football because I don't have to back in the day.
Yeah.
You got questions of like, Georgia loses to Kentucky a couple weeks ago. How do they respond? Bama loses to Vandy this past week. How do they respond? And as you guys mentioned, how have the teams that maybe haven't been punched in the mouth yet, how do they respond? How do they counterpunch for the first time? If you're a fan of chaos and you're a fan of this 12-team expansion of the college football playoff, I think this is exactly what you're looking for is good teams playing good teams, some craziness earlier in the year. How do these good teams respond? You're going to see very few teams at the end of the year, I think, with a 12-0 record. You might only see one or two. And who knows? Maybe one of them might be one of the military academies because Army and Navy continue to roll.
Yeah,
Maybe that's a playing game for the Army Navy game has some value at the end of the year for the playoff, the college football playoff. If you're a fan of chaos, if you're a fan of college football, I know that there's some heart palpitations when your team is into these tight games, but man, it has been a fun season so far.
Dude, how cool would it be to see an Army or a Navy in a top 12 playoff and get to see the triple threat option offense on national TV and watch how tough it is to guard that? I'll never forget playing Army my sophomore year. My knees, shins, and ankles have never hurt more from a game than the Army game because the way their offensive guards and centers just come out, just cut blocking because, they're only allowed to weigh like up to like maybe 265 or something like that. So like a lot of them are smaller guys. So they just cut you down and dive at your ankles and knees. My goodness. I was messed up after that game. That would be dope to see on a national scale. And I think right now we're seeing a parallel that we haven't seen before. That is college football to college basketball, where on a yearly basis now, teams can just go in the transfer portal and get an elite playmaker that could really change the trajectory of a team and its seasons. And you're seeing that with Colorado. You're seeing that with Dylan Raiola at Nebraska, where it's like, man, on a yearly basis, we're going to really have to continue to evaluate who these teams are because some of these changes that are now allowed will now start to have significant impacts on the trajectory of teams, seasons, and overall the programs altogether.
Yeah, and that's where I think I can let out a little bit of my Notre Dame hate in this conversation because I look at them like Notre Dame, like they don't have to play a conference schedule. They just kind of I looked at their schedule and they already got them ranked back in. They're like ranked what, number 11 now or something like that. And I feel like they're going to be a team that's just going to slide through and get to the playoffs because they're going to, they lost in North Illinois. People were saying, looking at the schedule, they could be undefeated this year. And I think they got to play USC, but Notre Dame just gets under my skin because I'm like, y'all are too good to be in a conference. Like, come join a conference and play a conference schedule, and then let's see how it goes.
Yeah, it's funny too because I guess they're loosely tied to the ACC. They play a lot of teams within the ACC conference. I get the independence, why they do it. I understand it, But at some point, you just go, can you guys just join the ACC already?
Just be a team player, man.
All right, before we wrap things up, I wanted to talk to you guys about one player in particular, because Justyn Martin has taken the college football world by storm at Boise State. 1,031 rushing yards, 16 touchdowns, and 10.9 yards per carry. I'm going to say that again just so everybody hears it. 10.9 yards per carry. So far this season, he's rushed for 267, 192, 127, 259, and 186. Guys, I know we talk about Travis Hunter as like probably the best college football player. The fact that he's playing on both sides is insane, especially at the level that he's done it. Is Justyn Martin starting to take kind of the reins of the early Heisman conversation?
I mean, what he's doing is just unheard of. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like, this dude, when I watch him play, it's like Alvin Kamara 2.0. Like, I've never seen contact balance like this dude has. Like, he gets hit is getting tackled, and dudes just melt off of his body. Like, I don't know what – it's like he's super – I don't know if he bathes in oil before the game. I don't know what he does. But it's like impossible to grab this dude. Dudes just melt right off him, and he just keeps running. Doesn't even break stride. It doesn't even look like it's tough to break the tackles that he's breaking. I mean, he's on another level. He's on another level.
I'm trying, as you're talking, I'm trying to look to see who they played this year, and like that's how they played Oregon. Like they played some quality teams, but looking at his stats, I mean, I guess he's almost 300 yards ahead of the second leading rusher in the country, and he's just putting up video game type numbers, and I'm embarrassed to say I haven't actually seen him play this year. But I look forward to check him out, man, because I mean, just looking at his numbers alone is like this dude is very special. I don't care who you're playing against. To be honest with you, if you put up those numbers, you're doing something really special.
So, guys, I know we don't talk like Vegas lines a lot on this show. It's just not something we do too much. But this past weekend, I have to bring this up. He was minus 180. To score 3 times, 3 touchdowns minus 180, which means you got to give money to get money on a triple touchdown score. And you know what? He did it in the first half.
The first half.
Crazy. Yeah, one of those games didn't even play in the second half.
Yeah,
one of those games. He didn't even play in the second half.
I believe they played Portland State or Sacramento State. It was an FCS opponent. And you're right. He didn't play at all in the second half. He only had 129 yards in that game.
Insane.
They got Hawaii this weekend. What do you think? What's he going for this weekend?
210.
Yeah, at least 200. You're gonna give him 200.
Just an unbelievable football player, guys. We have an unbelievable slate of college football coming up this week. I am super excited. Penn State, USC, of course. This is kind of where Penn State gets into the gauntlet a little bit. USC, Wisconsin, Ohio State. The next 3 games, they have a bye in between Wisconsin and Ohio State. But those are the next 3 games. It's time for some big boy Big Ten football. I don't know about you guys, but I am super excited for these next couple weeks of the season.
It's the part of the season we all been waiting for. I mean, we all enjoyed the 5-0 start and getting the wins against the teams we were supposed to beat. But this is where Penn State can really show not only our fan base but the entire country, because everyone's saying Penn State always wins the games they're supposed to win, but they can't win. The games against Michigan, Ohio State, or they're tougher opponents. So I'm super excited for this team. I'm sure the guys are excited to show, like, hey, we've been working all off season. We are ready. We're prepared to go through this gauntlet. And I always say I'm super biased, but I think our guys they're gonna be all right through these next 3 games.
All I know is I feel super confident in Penn State and the fact that we just have to play well over a stretch of games. It's no longer where the entire season is going to come down to one game. If we beat that one game, it's going to depend on how we play over a stretch of 3 or 4 games. And I feel a lot more confident about us playing at a high enough of a level to do well and do what we need to do in that 3-4 game stretch than just, everything's on the line. Whether we win the Big Ten championship or not comes down to whether we win this one game against Ohio State or against Michigan or, whatever it's been. So I feel confident. I feel great about it. This team's in a great spot. I feel like we're peaking at the right times and things we need to be. And there's going to be continued growth.
So one last thing to think about before we get out of here. Penn State ranked number 4, Ohio State number 2. We talked about the difficulties of Texas's schedule and an Oregon-Ohio State head-to-head coming up. There is a outside chance. I don't know how good of the chance, but an outside chance. If Penn State does what it's supposed to do and Ohio State beats Oregon, you may have the 1 and 2 teams in the country on that Saturday night when Penn State and Ohio State play.
I hope to see it. I hope to see it.
I wonder what they're going to do if, Ohio State beats both Penn State and Oregon. We don't play each other, and who are they going to put in for the Big Ten championship game? That's a possibility that happens this year. I'm very interested to see if that were to happen, what the criteria would be in which they pick the second person that actually gets into play. That's very possible that Ohio State goes 12-0. We sit at 11-1, and Oregon sits at 11-1, and then it's like, all right, now what? Who plays in it?
Well, like you said, take care of business, right? One stretch at a time.
Yes, sir.
Guys, this was a lot of fun as always. Appreciate you both, and thank you to all of our audience and our friends hanging out with us here on the All Nittany Lion podcast. We will catch you next Tuesday after the USC game. So we'll break down the USC game. We'll preview Wisconsin. And we'll do that all next Tuesday, back at our regular time at 4 o'clock. So for the guys on my right here, Adam Taliaferro and Jason Cabinda, I'm Tyler Zulli saying thank you guys so much for hanging out with us once again. Again, 4 o'clock next Tuesday, we'll be back at our regular time for the All Nittany Lion podcast here on PHLY, and we hope to see you then. Have a good one.
We all silly like the